Welcome to Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your co-MC Rich.
And I'm your co-MC Rach.
And we have some special guests on. First of all, we have a longtime gamer and designer working on making sure the next generation of geeks sees themselves represented. She's one of the founders of New Agenda Publishing and a founding curator for More Seats at the Table, a newsletter highlighting gender marginalized designers. You can find her on Twitter as BG Gameworks or on our website, blackgirlgameworks.com. It's Misha B. Hey, Misha.
How's it going?
Thanks for coming, Misha.
It's fun to be here.
Next, we have podcaster and game designer, best known for Pasión de las Pasiones, a game of telenovela drama powered by the Apocalypse. He also is a host on game design podcast Stop, Hack, and Roll, and a GM and player on a Masks AP known as Protean City Comics. You can find him on Twitter as bLeonGambetta or on his website, BrandonLeonGambetta.com. So therefore you already know. Hey, Brandon.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be coming on. I'm, as you know, a big fan of Plus One Forward and so happy to be joining because I'm also a big fan of Misha.
It's a fan podcast.
It is. We love the fan podcasts.
All together.
Actually, it's not. It's not. I'm sorry. It's not a fan podcast. You guys can have your fun
It's
away
serious
from the others.
discussion.
We're here for serious discussion about a particular thing. That's right. We're going to be taking an advance on Masks, a new generation. Masks is a Powered by the Apocalypse game about young superheroes. Let's kick it off with, how did you discover this game? I'll lead off. I happened to be working on a Google Plus YouTube thing called Indie Plus back in the day. And Brendan, not our Brandon, but Brendan, the game's designer, was playtesting this little superhero game that he was calling Masks. And then he went with like, is it going to be Masks New Generation? And like, are there other Masks RPGs? And so it was really wonderful as we played through the development cycles. No lie, Brendan is so prolific that he would completely rewrite the game between game sessions.
Wow.
And just say, okay, your playbook doesn't exist anymore, so we're going to need you to make a new character. I'm like, oh, man, but I like that guy. So it was fun, but he worked hard to make this thing what it is. Misha, what about you? How did you come to know about Masks, a New Generation?
So I also played a lot of games with Brandon. I think at the time we were doing a podcast of Dungeon World. And so he was like, hey, you want to write a playset? And I said, for what? And he said, for Masks. And he like drops his tome in my lap. and the rest is history.
Rach, what about you?
So I think I play tested Masks, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't think the playtester list is online anymore, but I think I play tested it in person, although the first time I encountered it may have been during the Kickstarter. And my partner and I at the time were on a bit of a Supers RPG kick because we had played a lot of Marvel Heroic role-playing, and there really wasn't quite anything to fill that niche over in PBTA land. So it was a big deal when that Kickstarter showed up.
What about you, Brandon?
I think I also found it during the Kickstarter. I got my hands on the playbooks and was just immediately like, okay, this is my obsession for the rest of my life now. Because I'm like a huge comic book fan. I was like, looking at this, I was like, I can do the New Mutants. One of the first actual play YouTube videos for Masks that exists is mine.
Nice.
And like I've got, I think, the longest running only Masks AP podcast. So I've been at it for a while, even though I'm not as cool as these people that knew it before it hit Kickstarter.
I knew it when it was called Mutant Hearts.
Oh.
Ooh.
I actually did it. I think I heard about that on was it G+? Oh no, my memory is going away.
I think that was the last social media that Brendan was on, so probably.
Probably.
This is the RPG podcast for olds.
So, Rach, give us the elevator pitch for Masks, a New Generation. Someone is listening to this podcast that has no idea what we're talking about.
Sure. Masks, a New Generation is a superheroes game. Okay, saying something is a superheroes game, that doesn't really narrow that down, right? Masks is about a team of young heroes figuring out who they are. That's both figuring out who they are as teenagers growing up, but also as the latest generation of superheroes navigating the legacies of the heroes that came before and helping shape the future.
Nice. Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Short podcast.
No, let's talk some more. Why should somebody play Masks? Brandon, you get to lead us off on this one. Tell us.
Sure thing.
Why play this game?
People should play Masks because it is one of the finest genre emulation games I've played. It is not saying, hey, you are superpowered people. It is saying you are caped, masked, teenage superhero comic book characters. And everything in it is designed to evoke that feel. So it doesn't just have the feel of, I don't know, like the Snyder Cut. It's not going to do that out the box. What it's going to do is it's going to get you like a teenage comic book that really hits all of the sorts of emotional beats that you actually get in those comics. And that's what I love about it, is that it's so very specific while allowing at the same time an enormous breadth of possibilities. Because it can do all of the teenage superhero comics.
You really hit the nail on the head for me, that genre emulation, because every superhero, so I like comics and I've played a number of superhero RPGs. And what I found is that, especially back in the day when I was in college and I was playing Champions was the superhero game at the time. I was a big reader of Wildstorm. Don't at me. It was the 90s. Okay, I'm sorry.
No judgment.
The Supers RPGs at that time, and still even today, and a lot of them are like physics emulation engines.
Yeah.
It's the would the Hulk beat Superman? That's what it cares about.
Mm-hmm.
When that's not necessarily what comics care about, because the Hulk has been this super powerful, very weak, a monster, a hero. That's what comics care about. And so this was the first game that I saw where I'm like, oh, wait, I don't just pit the characters against each other.
Mm-hmm.
I get to participate in telling that story. And it's not a foregone conclusion, because these mechanics are going to drive you to sometimes make really tough choices. That's what I love about Masks. What about you, Misha?
For me, it's the being able to like do that slice of life. Like everybody who reads fan fiction, you read it for the hurt, comfort, the snuggles afterwards, not necessarily the fight itself. The fight itself, if it takes like 3 rolls to resolve, great, that's fun. But now we get to go and deal with what happened after, the aftermath, the comfort and supporting, and the, oh, we just broke up and now we have to work together still, and it's just so mess. I love mess. It's just all rolled into one big smushy teenage ball of angst puddle, and it's great.
Rach, what about you?
I think Misha hits a lot of my points on it's very fanficky. It very much plays in that space of comics I enjoy, where it's a little bit, dare I say, soap opera-ish.
Yes.
If you want me to be all snotty media nerd, I think Masks fits into a unique space in PBTA where it's a game about teenage development and experience, but it's not designed to go hard and deconstruct your own personal teenager experience out of the box. It's not Monster Hearts, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it does open up a space to talk about themes of adolescence and idealism. It also plays with the ideas of heroes with the potential and also the drive to make the world a better place rather than looking internally and being self-destructive. Although some playbooks do go a little self-destructive, but that's not the overall theme of the game.
Yeah. And I feel like there are some guardrails
to
keep it from going over the edge that I haven't seen in some other emotional teenage-y RPGs. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, now that we might have the audience excited about this Masks game that they might not have heard of, we should touch a bit about content warnings and common themes that may come up in the game. Rich, what would you say would be flags, triggers that may come up in Masks?
Violence is certainly present. There's a whole slew of fighting because it's going to emulate that to solve problems with punching. Default, right? Everybody can take a different approach in the game that they play, but we're talking about what's in the cover, what's in the examples. Oppression of authority. All adults have influence over you. That can be problematic for some people. And that's something I definitely want to make sure folks know about. And you stuck this in here, Rach, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Teenage experiences.
It's about being
That's
a teenager.
the number one complaint I've heard about Mask. Yeah, it's about being a teenager. And I've actually heard that, like, I really don't want to play a teenager, right? I want to play a grown-ass superhero is the complaint I've heard from folks where I'm like, I hear you, but that's not what this game's about.
Which also,
Yeah.
oh my god, it sometimes is though. Because like if you look at like early X-Men, they're in their young 20s, they are adults, and this game will play young X-Men perfectly. It was zero edits needed to take place.
It's that very, very quotation-heavy adults.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but like not teenagers, you know?
Yeah, like, well, actually, so like my favorite age range to set it in is like that 18 to 20, so you're still technically a teenager, but you're also legally an adult.
Yeah.
So you can do all of the things that adults do,
Voting.
but you still are not a fully formed ass adult yet, and you know
Yes.
Mhm.
that's better. Yeah, plus it like gets around some of those like squicky legal, okay, because romance is a big part of mass, at least the way I
Yeah.
play it. And so you get around some of those issues of, okay, like, let's not deal with okay, this person's only 15, this person's 18, yeah, I can't deal with that. So
Yeah.
setting everybody legally old enough to consent to everything is the way I handle dealing with that.
That is a common point of conversation in the gaming and wider media discourse right now. And something to be aware of is Mask is about romance, and that could be romance involving minors, and that might not be a space that you feel comfortable playing in.
Totally.
And let me adjust my glasses to refer to page 10 of the Masks book, where it specifically says, in Masks you play characters who are approximately 16 to 20 years old. So it's right in your wheelhouse of what you're talking about, Misha. I think everybody, like even me, we call it the teenage superhero game.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
it says, hey, you can play 20-year-olds. You can do that. It's a young hero thing. It's a young adult thing. So good call out on that one, Misha.
Now that I'm an adult, 20 might as well be a teenager, though.
Yeah, right. Oh my god.
Oh,
would
yeah,
not
I
go
mean,
back
like,
to
no
20
offense
if
to
you paid
anybody.
me.
Listen, the older we get, the younger 20 seems.
Podcast for olds.
All right.
Now, back in my day, we played Mutants and Mastermind.
All right, let's talk about being a player in a Masks New Generation game. This is where we get to go with favorites. What is your favorite playbook and why? Let's lead off with Misha on this one.
So my favorite is Cyan, but Rich asked us to start with the basics, so I'm going to say Delinquent, because I am a big fan of a good redemption arc. So the Delinquent is what it says on the tin. They are the bad seed, gives no fucks, knocks over, spray paints, tags. They're the kid that, you look at and you think, huh, you're trouble. And you'd be right. But they have that heart of gold, and you just gotta, like, break through that crunchy exterior to get to the marshmallow fluff underneath. They're fiercely loyal to their friends, but you gotta, like, earn that friendship, too. And adults usually don't.
What's your favorite move from the Delinquent?
Either Mary Contrary, which, if somebody is trying to figure you out, give you a hug, or get your goat, it's a little harder for them to do, because you don't do that. And the other is I don't care what you think, which is, I just automatically can reject your influence, because I don't care. Those are my two favorites.
Nice. And rejecting influence is where someone with influence over you is trying to either adjust your stats that are called labels or try to put a condition on you. They're trying to mess with you and tell you how the world works, and it's easier for the delinquent to give them the bird, basically. Nice.
No, it isn't.
Adults are always bringing us down.
What about you, Rach? What's your favorite playbook?
Well, if you listen to this podcast enough and you know the quirks that I like rolling with in terms of characters, The Beacon is my favorite playbook. I love characters and heroes in comics who are clever and crafty rather than being powerhouses. The Beacon takes that idea and combines it with the classic archetype of the heart of the team. Sort of. It's not about the Beacon being the person with emotional powers. It's really about the Beacon is here because they want to be here, and they bring that energy to the table, and it's infectious.
I love beacons.
Yeah.
Beacons are all right.
Everyone loves beacons.
Everybody loves it. I don't know anybody who doesn't like the beacon.
So my favorite moves, I love the name of Straight Up Creepin' because it implies that darker edge to the beacon that's there. It's, baked in. You're not all happy, fluffy unicorns. But I think my actual favorite is pretty much a superhero. It's a type of move that shows up in a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games where the player rolls when their character meets another, like an NPC for the first time, and they want to indicate that NPC is important and has some direction on how the world views their character. I like the flavoring of this particular version of that move because the beacon has to name drop their superhero name for the move to trigger. Like, you might not know this, but my superhero name is da-da-da-da, and then you roll.
Yeah, it's like that scene from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm Star-Lord! Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let me flash my superhero ID at you. Now do you know me? It also helps you direct, in theory, if you're successful, the influence that adults have over you and what particular labels they see you as. So again, very on point for the mechanics, but also directly on point for the themes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say, like, if you asked me a different day of the week, I might give you a different playbook because the basic playbooks that come with Masks New Generation are all so strong. Mm-hmm. And I've run the game more than I've played it. So I've seen so many cool takes on different playbooks that it's hard, but my heart goes, at least today, to the Legacy. The Legacy is stripped from DC Comics. Like, it is the most DC Comics of all the basic playbooks.
Definitely.
It's the Flash family, it's the Bat family, it's the Shazam family. I would say Captain Marvel, but people would get confused. It's the whole thing of, like, you've got parents or grandparents who've done this thing and you're inheriting their mantle. And I think there's something really great about this game that is about generations, and Legacy just leans right into it. That is what the Legacy is all about. You've got your judgy elder, and you've got your black sheep in the family who maybe you kind of, the two of you sat at the kids' table way back in the day, and you maybe don't agree with where they are in the world now, but it's still, like, there's that connection. There's some beautiful, beautiful, rich story for the Legacy. It's super fun, and the power set is pretty sweet. You get cool moves like fighting the good fight for when you're pulling your punches. I love that, right? It's that little bit of wisdom of, like, or it could be the little bit of cockiness that is pulling your punches, and you get to use a different stat for engaging with folks. Symbol of Authority is nice because it's a move that reinforces that mantle that's so important and the key of what makes the Legacy a really cool playbook. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Legacy. Now, I think we're done with playbooks, right? Because everybody's gone. Is that right?
I'm afraid there's someone even more powerful here to take over your podcast. My favorite of the base playbooks is the Nova, which Rich hates. And I've gotten a lot of arguments about the Nova because I think the Nova is an enormously slick playbook. First off, it is the powerhouse. And so, like, when you're looking for comic book characters, there are so many of them that stand out as just these enormous forces of nature. When you're talking about Jean Grey, when you're talking about Scarlet Witch, when you're talking about Billy Kaplan, you're talking about people that exist as humans and have human emotion, but they are so fundamentally powerful that there is a disconnect because the rest of their team can be doing whatever, and they could just end the universe and just do it. And having that enormous pressure of their ability to just do things and just succeed and change reality forever, paired with the fact that the only way they can do that is by just ripping their emotions forward and sticking them on the table and getting worse and messing up is just, it's so teenager, and it's so core to my teenage experience of feeling like super powerful and I can do whatever I want to and I'll succeed eventually and I just won't do my homework, but eventually I'll pull it out at the last minute and get things together. That feeling, but just paired with, oh, but the consequences are so much worse than having to talk your way out of a low grade in English class or something. For me, that character that is just so enormous that the world has to listen to them. Even though they are a kid figuring stuff out, is so cool to me. And you're kind of feeling it, aren't you?
That is cool.
Well, I'm sitting here having the epiphany that I know all three of you personally, and I can be like, I see this side of this person's personality in this playbook, and this side of that person's personality, and oh no, I think we just named different facets of ourselves.
Yeah, probably. A little bit.
I think there's something to that for any game, obviously, but like, especially for a game that's about identity and playing with your space of your identity and everything like that.
Nice.
What are your favorite moves from the Nova playbook?
Oh, so the Nova's cool. It doesn't get moves. It has one move, and then it has like little mini moves that fit under that. My favorite of those is called Worship, which says you put out a tremendous display of your might. Spend one burn to awe an audience into silence, respect, and attention when you unleash your powers. You hear it, and you're like, wow, that doesn't sound very super heroic. But that can totally be like Superman stopping something terrible from happening, and just everyone around just like watching in silence. It sounds so dark, and it can be Loki having everybody bow to him, but it can also just be a moment for everyone to recognize how important your characters are. And so it recenters the world around you and your team. And it separates you from your team, which is also good because it makes the rest of your team go like, ooh, our friend is scary. And that's a delightful plot thread to pull on.
Pretty cool.
I want to play an Inking God as a Nova so badly. I got to play it once in a one-shot. It was beautiful.
Nice.
It was amazing.
Very cool. So, more for players, there are some basic moves that are shared by all. What is your favorite basic move, Misha?
I gotta go comfort and support. After the battle has been won or lost, you never know. You've got that moment of bonding where you're like just chilling and you're trying to get through to your, not just your teammate, but your friend. And you're trying to make them feel better about what just went down. Let me read it to you. When you comfort or support someone, roll mundane. And that's the other thing. You're not rolling you're not rolling superior. You're not rolling free. You're rolling mundane. You're just being your normal self. On a hit, they hear you, and they may mark potential clear condition or shift labels if they open up to you. So it's a two-way street. You've got to like get through to them, and they've got to say, yeah, you know what? You're right. This is what I feel. On a 10 plus, you can also add team to the pool. But you can do this like in a heat of battle. It's a little trickier in the heat of battle, but it's possible.
I love it in the heat of battle.
Yeah. You can do it, Michi. Remember.
I can't. I'm not strong enough.
You can. I believe in you no matter what.
And then they grab hands.
We can do
and
it
punch
together.
a giant or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Rach, what about you? What's your favorite basic move?
So I had to think about this one, and I'm going to go with defend.
Slick.
It's a pretty basic move. Triggers when you defend someone or something from an immediate threat. You roll plus savior. But what I like about it is putting it on that basic move sheet makes it transparent to the players. This is something you need to be thinking of as an active choice. Defending is not a reaction. It's just something you do because you're a superhero.
It's not all punching people in the face. Sometimes you got to take the punch for your buddy.
Exactly. And I think with more combat-focused games, which I could make the argument that Masks is, there's a tendency for players to think about offensive mechanics. How do I hit the thing, and how do I hit the thing harder? But in a super story, is hitting the villain in the face the hardest, the true hero, or is it the person who's going to defend their friend or defend the innocent bystanders?
Who's going to save the nun that's trying to cross the street behind you and make sure the building doesn't fall on her?
Brandon, what about you?
Anyone who's played Masks with me knows that Take a Powerful Blow is my favorite move. It is listed as a basic move, and so I'm taking it as this. It's a long move. I don't think you want me to read all of it, but the idea is when you take a powerful blow, whatever that might mean, whether that is a fist from someone huge or whether that is an argument being made against you or someone breaking up with you or whatever, you roll with your conditions and you want to roll low. And so 10 plus, things get wild. You get knocked out of the storyline for a little bit by a passing, fleeing, whatever. You lose control of yourself or your powers in a terrible way, which if you're the Nova is amazing. Or you have like a mixed result where you end up some problems crop up, or you get the miss, you get the 6-, and you get to do that Spider-Man underneath the building moment where you weather the blow and you just hold it up. And that for me is a perfect superhero move. Because superheroes, as we said, are not just about punching. It's about how you take the oppressive systems and you take the things that are difficult and you get back up. You fight and you lose maybe, and then you stand up again and you fight again. And so that for me is right where the superhero genre is. And there's nothing in the rules that says you need to wait for the GM to ask you before you do it. Or if there is, no GM will ever. So you can be in a conversation and you get to say the words, I would like to take a powerful blow. Because what just happened was very difficult for you. And that now suddenly you've got a path forward through the role play, whatever it needs to be. That's awesome.
And I think if we talk about taking a powerful blow, we got to talk about the conditions that happen within Mask.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got angry, afraid, guilty, hopeless, and insecure. So the more of those you have marked, the more likely it is you're going to roll high on take a powerful blow. So the more like churned up inside you are, the harder that blow is going to hit you in the face or in the feels, which is just as bad. And sometimes, like one of the options you can take there is take more conditions. So the next time you get hit in the feels, it's even harder. It's amazing.
And all of those...
It's a metaphor.
And all those conditions, they're not just HB. They're also narrative permission for you to look at your sheet and go, I'm angry. I'm going to shout at my friends. I'm guilty. I'm going to go mope. And like that's like that permission structure is so good.
Rich, what's your favorite basic move?
I know that every PBTA game has this kind of move, this act under fire. It's your catch-all. It's the move that usually I find incredibly boring because it is when all our cool moves don't fit, but you still want to put dice to it, roll 2d6 plus a thing. On a 7 to 9, you kind of get it. On a 10 plus, it's great. On a 6 minus, the GM MC will tell you how it went bad. And that's... well, I yawn. The catch-all move for Masks: A New Generation is Unleash Your Powers, which is interesting because it's like you're doing superhero-y stuff. It may not necessarily be flying. It could be using your training. Like it's part of that penumbra of no other move covers it. It's still a catch-all. But what I like about it is that it's crafted to lean a little bit more into the system and gives the player a tough choice. If 10 plus, you still do the thing. 6 minus, you mark potential, which is XP, and GM makes a move. It's called GM in this game. 7 to 9 is the part that's really interesting because the GM can make this thing unstable, or you can pay a cost. You can take a condition, have your character take a condition as they push through and have that mixed success and they pull it off. And I think that's really, really nice because conditions, as we just talked about, really fuel a lot of the other mechanics and role play. Comfort and support, when you don't have a condition, is a little harder to finagle. You can still do it because you can mark potential from comfort or support. But I really like Unleash Your Powers because it's my favorite catch-all move in PBTA games. So let's skip on over here and talk to, this is the For the MCs section, but for Masks, we shall call it For the GMs.
Sure, for the GMs, as we were discussing before.
Exactly, for the GMs. What type of stories does Masks: A New Generation tell? When you sit down at the table, what should people expect? I'm not calling on somebody. Whoever's most passionate goes now.
I have a passionate opinion on this. It tells teenage superhero stories. Don't try to shove it out of bounds and make it do something that it's not trying to do. What that actually could mean at your table, though, does have a broad range of flavors and settings. I think a GM starting out with Masks right now has so much more media to reference than previous generations of GMs playing Supers games.
Yeah.
We are living in an age where we have so many superhero pieces of media on streaming. There's comic book apps. You can have unlimited comics with whatever platform for so much a month. You can just go and dive into the media and figure out what particular aspect of young superheroes you really love. Because I'm willing to bet if I go around and pull this roundtable, we will all say we have a different favorite franchise or piece of media to go like, this is teenage superheroes for me.
You want some teen angst? You want stories about not fitting in? Stories about elder generations messing things up so much that you have to break the mold? You want to quietly enjoy while openly mocking four-color comics? This is the game for you. That's what Masks: A New Generation does for me, is it allows me to embrace my love of the silliness of comics and then reject it or expect the player characters to reject it. I've had so many NPCs that are just stripped from bad comics with the same logic of, I'm going to rob this bank, and watching PCs deal with that is just delightful. It's so fun.
That's part of the base setting too, is you have these previous generations that hit on different generations of comic books. So you can go back and have conversations about, hey guys, remember how edgy the 90s were? That was really weird, right?
What even goes in those pockets, dude?
And then it is required by law that if you're talking about Masks, you have to make fun of Rob Liefeld. So you can also say, like, and he comes in, he doesn't have any feet, and he's got like 800 teeth, and his back is turned at an angle, and his chest is just like a barrel, and he's holding a woman over his shoulder, and she's like a snake, basically.
It's
and you can just include that because it's genre emulation.
Yeah, mandatory.
Yeah.
I can imagine that panel in my head.
Right? Remember in the 80s, all those movies where the kids had to like save the world or save their parents or whatever? Those were always like my inspirations for us. Like, okay, let's put something you love in peril and make you go fight for it and see what you do. That crucible that you're forged in.
Nice.
Yeah, but also, what do you do when you're a teenager and you're under pressure? Like,
do you crack? Do you run? Do you cry? Do you step up? Do you go get a buddy and go and kick some ass? What do you do?
And I think that the way that these stories are so universal and so easy to tap into, like just from an emotional state of being a teenager and trying to like figure out your world, and the game has such a good structure of these generations, I'm going to combine these two into one thing, that this game is perfect for starting to develop your own connected universe. There is like a base setting in it, but when you run a mini campaign, you introduce a lot of important NPCs, but you don't introduce an Urban Shadows amount of NPCs.
oh gosh.
Like if you played Urban Shadows and then you played a second campaign of Urban Shadows and a third campaign of Urban Shadows, you have 7,000 characters.
Yeah. 7,000.
Possibly literally.
Possibly literally.
Yes.
With Masks, you've got enough to carry you through each of those campaigns, and you've got enough to like tie them in later and not get overwhelmed with it. And so like I think that it really creates an idea that you're going, here's this character, Chainlink, he's from the 90s. What does that mean? What does that mean about the world that we're in? And what new comic line did that create? And so then you can like keep on playing new things that all attach to each other, which is wonderful.
Nice.
All right. Our new GMs are listening, hyped to run Masks. With the current situation in the world, they can only grab 2 friends to go play online. What playbooks would you recommend our new Mask group start out with? Rich, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I will go Bull, and then things get broken. Streetlights to Hearts. That's a spectrum. The Bull and anything else is pretty easy, right? The Bull will then determine, are you my love or my rival with other player character? And then we create a triangle with the one that's unfilled and a cool NPC on their team. The Legacy and the Delinquent are a really fun, odd couple that can be great. And this isn't playbook related, but I just want to say, like, kick off the game with a big fight. Like, these two people kick off with a big fight, have that fight end before half an hour passes. Do not take any more time. Like 15, 20 is really the way to go. But like have that fight be done, because the aftermath will push and propel forward for the rest of the session for those two folks, for sure. Rach, what about you?
I would go with the Nova and the Innocent, and then they would drive around, going from town to town, defeating small villains. What? This is absolutely not inspired by the Adventures of Speedball Injustice spinoff that I should have gotten from Avengers Academy, but never did, Marvel. This is my fangirl agenda, and you can't take it away from me, because I'm the GM. My gut feel is that you want two playbooks that are matched in terms of scope, but also riff off of each other thematically. I wouldn't be too concerned with power levels, but more concerned with narrative weight. I like, for example, the idea of the Doomed and the Legacy as a duo. The same NPC can be the Doom's nemesis and also the Legacy's greatest opponent.
Nice.
Yeah. The game can explore themes of characters having influence on the world, but that influence is very finite and will change over time. You could explore mortality, that sort of thing.
Nice.
Misha, how about you? What two playbooks, what weird odd couple situation would you suggest to prospective GMs?
I'm going to say either go Beacon and Legacy, because Beacon is the not powered superhero that's trying their best and is trying to prove that they belong here. And the Legacy has had everything handed to them on a silver platter, but doesn't necessarily want it and is trying to figure out if they want it. So they're like picking at each other, because like the Beacon wants to be the Legacy and the Legacy wants to be a Beacon, and it's just that kind of, why are we together? You can do a whole like enemies to lovers arc. You can there's so many ways you could go with that combo. The other would be, I think Legacy and Delinquent is also another fun one, because you've got, yeah, so what? You're the Bat family. You think I care? I can go do whatever I want. And so you've got that, no, you have to fall back in line, versus no, I'm not going to fall back into line. And you get that duality there. But ultimately, it's just like take the two that your players gel with the most. And you can have fun with any two of them.
Yeah.
Brandon, what about you?
First off, Misha's completely right. Any two playbooks will work. Although, like, which playbooks you choose will direct the story in pretty big ways. A Doomed changes what the table plays like, for example. But for me, for newer players, I would love to see the Janus and the Outsider. They're both relatively simple playbooks to play. You don't need to come up with 100,000 NPCs for them. Like, so you don't need to come up with like 3 members from your Legacy, or you don't need to come up with a protege sort of thing. It's grab and go in a pretty big way. And it really sets up a nice dichotomy of superhero time and human time. And the Outsider will be like trailing along and trying to interact with the human world and messing things up in the Janus's life. And Spider-Man can teach the Beyonder all kinds of things.
Like how
family-friendly podcast. Let's not talk about why. But then you've got that really nice opportunity to have something from space come in. And so you can really tie in the Outsider and their knowledge of space and like the bad things out there with what it is to be human and have to juggle these responsibilities that the Outsider doesn't have. Really, it adds a lot of emotions between the two people that they wouldn't necessarily see eye to eye on. And you get some really good opportunities for both playbooks to really want to learn about the other, which bonds them together in a really serious way.
Wow, that's good.
A+.
That's really good.
I just want to see Aunt May inviting the Outsider over for tea or something.
Yes.
Oh, here, you have to have some more. Oh, what is this thing you call it?
It also guarantees that someone is wearing like a superhero costume, because I cry every time I play a game of Masks and people are not describing a superhero costume.
Oh, yeah.
I love a mask. I love a mask. I love, like, I want to see head buttresses. Like, go for it. Why is everyone in a leather jacket? Come on, step it up, step it up.
Because I'm the delinquent, duh.
You could do the next wave thing. You can all wear trench coats, but you got to wear your uniform underneath.
Should I make a confession
Yes.
right now?
Okay.
Sure.
I don't like the delinquent. I know. It's like the most popular playbook. I have almost never seen a group that doesn't have a delinquent in it. It doesn't hit for me. And that's fine.
Yeah,
because I just don't need to play it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love that there is that variety because everybody's going to have something that they're like, that's it. That one. Yes, for me. We're a mask delinquents.
I like it. There's parts of the Delinquent I find interesting, but I like the arc of the kind of prickly outsider learning to trust others and open up. I mean, it's kind of my favorite archetype in a couple of franchises. My heart's there, but that's not what people do with it.
Done well, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's such a challenging playbook to play.
The way it's written is really good, too, because it reinforces you care about this team.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to notice you. You're doing delinquent stuff often for their benefit. You're the person that will commit crimes to get the right thing to happen for your team.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all wonderful. But my experience is that people who are angled towards a delinquent do not pursue those choices with a delinquent.
For that reason, I think the Reformed and the Scion actually work better for the redemption arc thing.
Yeah.
The Scion would be,
Absolutely.
it's your parent that was the bad guy. And maybe, you were going along with it because it's dad or mom. And, of course you got to, they're the ones who raised you. And you believe them to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you're trying to find your own way. But you still got that one foot in the underworld. And that's
so
much
good.
more fun arc to play, I think.
100%. Yeah.
Sad. But that's not a base playbook, so we couldn't say that one.
Masks, excellently written game. We have lots of lovely things to say about it. But like any game, there are some challenges bringing it to the table, getting it to run as intended. It's going to happen to any game. Brandon, new GM for Masks. What challenges, what roadblocks would you tell them just to be aware of? Something so they don't trip over something later on.
The biggest thing that I think players need to pay attention to is the difference between unleash your powers and directly engage a threat. That is something that you can hear me real badly screwing it up in the first couple episodes of Protean City, because we had someone who can affect people's memories, and I did not know how to use that in directly engage versus unleash your powers. You just got to be so exact about directly engage is if you are directly engaging.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not directly engaging, you are not rolling that. If you are doing something sneaky, you are not directly engaging. And unleashing your powers affects the situation. It isn't an attack. And so if you want them to mark a condition, you're not unleashing your powers. If you want to full on defeat them, KO, ding ding, then you're not unleashing your powers. That sets up an opportunity for you to get a hit in, or it sets up an opportunity for you to directly engage a threat. But just understanding those two moves is really pivotal to making your fight scenes feel good. And I'm a big fight GM. I'm all for that. But you gotta really get your fundamentals on those two moves going really nicely, and then it will you'll get so much better.
That's good advice. Rach, what about you? What challenges should someone consider?
I encountered a lot of quirkiness with Masks when we were first playtesting it, because so much of the game is focused on the language of combat in the basic move triggers that we fumbled around and couldn't figure out how to make moves trigger. It's gonna sound ridiculous, but I swear this happened.
No, I see
We're
that.
like, I'm doing this thing. How does this move trigger? I don't mean that in the sense that this game is only about punching baddies and taking their stuff, more than the game wants you to focus on that superhero aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this makes a bit more sense if I explain that we transitioned from playing a lot of Monster Hearts, a lot of Urban Shadows, where the moves are more fiddly and about you being around town and doing things. I love urban fantasy. I can see a lot of parallels between supers and urban fantasy. Mechanically, two very different beasts.
Mm-hmm.
It took time for us to rewire our expectations for what the game was supposed to do and really want it to do. The themes are similar, but the plot beats very different.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out that rhythm was a bit of a challenge.
Isha, did you want to go last or do you want to go next?
I'll go. Mine is make sure you're all on the same page as to tone. Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go are the exact same characters, but they are very different shows.
Yes.
And so if one of you is playing Teen Titans Go and everybody else is playing Teen Titans, you're not having the same experience, and somebody's going to be butting heads because it's not going to work for you. So make sure before you start, everybody's on the same page as to what it is, how you are trying to deal with everything stylistically. Is it the more zany over the top? Is it no, we're going to go a little slightly darker, grittier Snyder cut? Which way are we going with things? And make sure you get that on the table and everybody understands it before you go.
And in that example, the player that is playing Teen Titans Go, just find them and ask them to leave.
Yeah, I mean, if they continue after, I think we've got some kind of disconnect. After you talk to them about it, if they continue to play Teen Titans Go when everybody else is playing Teen Titans, then yes, ask them to leave.
Okay, I have feelings about challenges.
Share your feels.
I've got to share some feels. First of all, the Nova, while Brandon has convinced me that is a worthy comic booky-ish kind of adjacent playbook that I will welcome at a future table now because of Brandon's persuasive skills.
Woo!
It is hard to GM for the Nova because you've got to heap conditions onto that player character, and you need to have that conversation with that player if they have never played a Nova before, because it's going to feel like you're going at them. And you need to make sure that they know this is to prime that engine and make it work. I have seen Novas who turtle when I try to soup them up so their flares will fire and they don't make the rest of their team hate them for failing everything they try. The Doomed. I do not offer the Doomed in a one-shot at a con any longer because the Doom track is built for longer-term play. It looks like it's a thing that might work, but trust me, it's just not. And so the Doom is going to fizzle out, or you put so much emphasis into ticking up that Doom track that it kind of loses cohesion and feels a little silly. Doomed, great playbook, not one that I offer as a one-shot. Other feels that I have. The Janus. The Janus has got a whole lot going on the side. Same for the Protege to a degree, but the Janus even more so. That can take up a lot of spotlight, and you need to be very cognizant of that and make sure that you are cutting back to other player characters or the rest of the team doing things, because it can become the Janus show.
Yeah.
A delightful show, a show I want to watch, but not fair to the other 2 to 4 players that may be sitting at the table going, "Oh no, I got a turn."
Now, the Janus is excellent for one-on-one play, however.
Oh man. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
There's no better playbook for that.
And here's the last one. It's going to get a teeny bit mathy, but trust me on this. You want a big bad, and you think big bads need to have all the conditions. Do not. I personally never have more than 3 conditions on a villain. Here's why. Let me math it out for you, right? Right? 2d6 is often going to be on the spread of like just barely like 7 to 9 is going to be most likely what you get, which means that when you're directly engaging, right, sometimes they're going to get hurt, sometimes they'll actually ding. Every time a condition happens, you're supposed to launch a move. If you put 4 conditions, 5 conditions on, I've literally heard of villains with 5 conditions, and that fight will take a freaking hour, and it's not fun anymore. It very quickly is not fun anymore. Fights should be like, 2 things should happen to end a fight. 5 die rolls or a couple of conditions. That's all you need to happen in a fight. Now, if you want to like go with your prep, that's fine. Just make sure that you do not put more than 3 conditions on somebody, because it will take 4 freaking ever, and you've basically dropped into a champions game, and that's
what
not
an
the
insult.
strength of masks. I feel very passionately about that. I know there are other people who can really pull it off. I can't, so I'm giving you advice based on my experience. Limit the conditions.
Little advice for players also. You do have to hit the bad guy.
Oh,
You
God,
cannot
yes.
always resist and avoid their blows. Sometimes you have to just take the punch.
And you can't just only reroute their attacks. It is important to reroute attacks. It's important to save civilians. You eventually need to punch the guy, because the fight doesn't end until you punch the guy. I think that is a player skill that is sometimes missing in our very story narrative side of RPGs, that we've gotten so used to not swinging swords that we forget that we can swing a sword sometimes. And so sometimes fights can go on just longer because no one wants to get the punch in. And you should get the punch in because it's rad.
It's like standing at a door with a couple of Canadians. No, you go. No, you go. No, you go.
Yeah.
Oh, my people. I'm so
I'm sorry. You go.
Can I inspect the door?
Can I seduce the door?
Can I reason with this door?
I'm going to roll perception again.
I want to comfort the door.
No, punch him.
this
Sometimes you just got to punch him. You're superheroes. Things are happening fast.
Oh, Lordy mercy. So good. So good, Brandon. Thank you for that wisdom.
Well, I mean, that also can be like playbook management. That can be a GM side thing too. If you've got like a lot of characters that are not people that want to punch, it can be good to go, hey, why don't we bring a bull in here?
The bull is often the answer to a question.
Or do the cheat of, and so this next hit will probably take the guy out. Who wants to go?
Yeah. Wow, he's really rocked back on his heels. Pretty much anyone could punch him right now.
Brandon's smart. He's done this thing before. It's good. As it should be.
Just to wrap things up here, if our listeners are really hyped to go pick up Masks: A New Generation, it's actually really easy to find Masks online. PDFs are available at DriveThruRPG. Physical books are available at Magpie's web store. There are several supplements and I think bundles where you can buy everything for the game. There's setting books, there's cards for tracking influence and conditions and generating NPCs. A lot of stuff you could buy for this game.
The deck of villainy is lots of fun.
There's also some fan-made playbooks that you can hunt down on itch that have some really cool stuff as well.
And the Mass Discord is hopping, and there's always games being pitched and run. And so if you're looking to play a game, go take a look there.
Nice. We will have links for those in the show notes.
Brandon, if our listeners want to see more of your work online, where can they find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter, probably way too often, at bleongambetta. I've got a website that I don't update often enough at brandonleongambetta.com. Main place to look for me is probably the actual play podcast of Masks: A New Generation, Protean City Comics, where we aim to really emulate the idea of an entire comic book universe. Hop in anywhere, just like real comics.
And Misha, where can our listeners find you on social media if they want to see more of your work?
Easiest place to find me is BG Gameworks on Twitter, or my website, blackgirlgameworks.com, where I've got a list of links to most of the stuff I've worked on.
Misha, thank you so much for coming on and educating us about your Masks love and sharing with us everything that you have in this particular episode.
Thanks for having me.
Brandon Leon Gambetta, thank you again for coming on to Plus One Forward. It was a delight having you.
Always such a pleasure.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Hammer of Bill. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Listeners, we want to let you know that Hearts of Wulin, our PBTA game of wuxia melodrama, is now available as a PDF on DriveThruRPG. Hearts of Wulin emulates films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and Shadow, and TV series like The Untamed and Ancient Detective. It is inspired by the Chinese martial arts novels of Jin Yong and Gu Long and their many adaptations. In these tales, romance is as dangerous as a blade. You can buy Hearts of Wulin at the Gauntlet store on DriveThruRPG. You can find more information and resources for it on our Gauntlet blog, on the Gauntlet webpage at gauntlet-rpg.com.